This book is written for our Army. It explains our profession, our purpose, and what it means to be an American soldier. You will notice this book is not written like other military doctrine. It touches on values and concepts through stories and in non-prescriptive terms. It requires judgment in application. The book is intended to be read from cover to cover. While the stories may be of past battles and heroic actions, it also reflects the increasingly challenging times we live in. It offers the reader a serious, solemn, and sober perspective of the Army's tasks ahead. FM1 is relevant to every soldier, for we share common responsibilities and a common commitment to each other. As we each move through our Army journey, we should all pick this text up from time to time to refresh our understanding of our priorities and our sense of purpose. This book should be informative too, for our joint teammates, aspiring soldiers, and fellow citizens not in uniform. After all, our Army belongs to the country. We serve the American people. This we'll defend.
The air was cold and the moonlight bright on the night of October 25, 2007. A 7-man squad from Battle Company, 2nd Battalion, 503rd Airborne Infantry, was returning from a mission in the Korengal Valley of Afghanistan. They stepped quietly along a ridgeline. Suddenly, a wall of bullets struck the squad. Tracer rounds filled the sky. Out of the quiet, ferocious cracks, pops and screeches erupted from machine guns, rifles, and rocket-propelled grenades. The Alpha Team leader, medic, and automatic rifleman lay bleeding, and Staff Sergeant Eric Gallardo, the squad leader, took a round to the helmet. Their teammates tried to reach them, but were blocked by the intense fire. Specialist Salvatore "Sal" Genta, the Bravo Team leader, directed his 2 team members as they returned fire. However, something was wrong. As he helped the miraculously uninjured Gallardo to safety, Specialist Genta took hits to his front plate and the rocket strapped to his back. The shots had come from 2 different directions, which meant the squad was caught in an L-shaped ambush. Specialist Genta knew they needed to act quickly to avoid being surrounded. Without hesitation, he called for his squad mates to fall back a few paces so they wouldn't be flanked. Then he directed them to suppress the enemies to the west and assault to the north. They threw grenades and fired their rifles. Threw and fired. Threw and fired. It gave them space. Bravo Team soon reached the wounded automatic rifleman, who was trying to clear his weapon. Staff Sergeant Gallardo began rendering aid, but Specialist Genta pressed on to find the Alpha Team leader. In the moonlight, he saw 3 figures ahead, 2 Taliban and the limp body of his friend between them. Specialist Genta sprinted toward the trio, firing his rifle at the enemy fighters. He killed one and wounded the other, then pulled his friend, the gravely wounded Alpha Team leader, to cover. 2nd and 3rd platoons arrived, securing the site. In those few terrible minutes, the medic perished, but the rest of the injured squad mates were evacuated. Although the Alpha Team leader died in surgery the next day, Specialist Genta's aggressive assault spared his family the fate of having a loved one die in Taliban captivity. For his conspicuous gallantry and selflessness, Specialist, later Staff Sergeant Genta, received the Medal of Honor. This is our country's highest and most exclusive award for combat valor. But in later interviews, Staff Sergeant Genta emphasized that he was just a regular guy. He said, "We were all in the fight, And if I'm a hero, then every man that stands around me, every woman in the military, everyone who goes into the unknown is a hero.
Soldiering in our Army means more than just holding a job. It means being a committed member of a profession and a purpose greater than yourself, to fight for and defend our Constitution. It means having and maintaining special skills and cultivating our body of warfighting knowledge. And it means enforcing a strict ethical code and demanding good character. Once soldiers enter our profession, it becomes their obligation to make true what Specialist Genta said: if I'm a hero, then every man and woman that stands around me is a hero. Our Army motto is "This will defend," and our Army has allowed millions, from generation to generation, to sleep soundly at night with the peace of mind that we will protect them. Whether you're a soldier, past, present, or future, you're part of that legacy, and it's your duty to uphold it.
In July 1944, a young dentist named Captain Ben Solomon landed on the island of Saipan. When the doctor for 2nd Battalion, 105th Infantry, was wounded by a mortar, Captain Solomon volunteered to take his place. After all, there was little dental work required in battle. 2nd Battalion pushed north through the island's muggy jungles. When they found Japanese fighters hidden in the network of limestone caves, they drove them out. But as the Japanese numbers dwindled, their ferocity grew. After many days of movement north, the men in 2nd Battalion dug in near the coast and braced for counterattack. It came. At 5 a.m., the first Japanese attack burst from the thick jungle brush, engulfing the American defensive line in a tidal wave of suicidal vigor. Wounded Americans started pouring into Captain Solomon's aid tent. He and his medics rushed from man to man, working steadily on the injuries. Suddenly, a Japanese soldier appeared at the tent flap and bayoneted a wounded American lying on a stretcher. Captain Solomon shot the enemy soldier, but 2 more charged in behind him. Unfazed, Captain Solomon raced forward and clubbed them with his rifle. As Captain Solomon turned back towards his patients to continue treatment, 4 more enemies crawled under the sides of the tent. He shot one and stabbed 2. The last one he headbutted. With the aid station compromised, Captain Solomon yelled to his medics to evacuate the remaining patients. "I'll hold them off until you get them to safety," he shouted. "See you later." Then he raced from the tent. The situation outside was dire. Pockets of Americans were still resisting, but the battalion was overrun. 4 American gunners slumped over a machine gun nearby. Captain Solomon rushed to it. After the battle, when a party from the 27th Division returned to assess the damage, they found Captain Solomon's body at the machine gun. 98 enemy soldiers piled in front of it. He had been shot and bayoneted over 70 times.
The most basic element of our vocation as a warrior is to execute violence on our country's behalf, and to embody an ethos of toughness, resilience, and a willingness to fight. Importantly though, you're also duty-bound to act honorably and ethically. As a warrior, you have to be a fighter, and you also need to demand that your soldiers are fighters too. As a leader in the United States Army, you are a steward to warrior culture, grounded in grit, aggression, relentless energy, and codified in the warrior ethos and the soldier's creed. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. Every soldier must know how to fight, to shoot, move, communicate, and render first aid in battle. These and many other basic warrior tasks are an essential element of soldier training. They're tough tasks that need to be ingrained in the hearts of our soldiers through grueling, realistic training in the rain, mud, snow, and even oppressive heat. That's why every soldier, no matter their specialty, learns these things in their initial training. Just like Captain Ben Solomon. When Captain Solomon ran from his tent in Saipan, he wasn't a seasoned combat veteran or an infantryman, but he drilled on the basics. Those skills gave him the confidence to see clearly, act deliberately, and kill the enemy in front of him. When the battle is underway, we all must be able to engage and destroy the enemy. And so it's your duty as a leader to consistently sharpen not only your own warfighting skills, but also to consistently nurture them in your soldiers and keep our army strong.
October 8, 1918, in the Argonne Forest in France, a 17-man team was tasked with capturing a railroad near the French commune of Châtel-Chery. One of the soldiers was a corporal from Tennessee named Alvin York. Corporal York grew up in poverty and had attended only 9 months of school, but was an excellent marksman after years of hunting game in the Appalachian Mountains. Misreading their map, the Americans found themselves behind enemy lines. They surprised a German unit and won the ensuing engagement, taking the enemy soldiers prisoner. However, the fight alerted other German units to their position. Soon, a barrage of machine gun fire cut through the group, killing or wounding all but 7 Americans, including York's good friend, Murray Savage. Corporal York quickly moved out to take on the gun, while the other 6 stayed low and returned fire. As he moved up the hill, he calmly took out the advancing Germans with his rifle. Suddenly, Germans came running through the woods with rifles and bayonets to stop Corporal York's blitz. Though he was nearly out of rifle ammunition, York still had his Colt pistol. He laid down on the hillside and, like a turkey hunter in a Tennessee holler, took out the flock of German soldiers, advancing on him from back to front so as not to spook the lead bird. Finally, the Germans, not wanting to lose any more men, shouted to York that they would surrender. Corporal York paused, his pistol still poised to fire, and watched the enemy soldiers drop their weapons. York's body was coursing with adrenaline from the battle, and his thoughts were undoubtedly clouded by fear, anger, and grief after watching so many of his teammates die around him. He could have succumbed to the chaos of the moment. He could have easily killed the remaining Germans standing all around him. Instead, Corporal York simply stopped shooting. The woods, which were filled moments before with the ear-splitting cracks of gunfire, fell quiet as the Germans moved down the hill to join their already captured comrades. Then York and the other 6 Americans, who had collectively killed more than 24 Germans, gathered the now 132 prisoners and calmly marched them back to the American line. Corporal York epitomized the warrior ethos. He was tough, skilled, mission-focused, and lethal. Yet, when faced with the choice of acting on bloodlust or showing restraint, he did the right thing. He chose restraint.
In the context of history, American soldiers are unique. We don't ascribe to principles of terror or ruthlessness. We aspire to be warriors of character. Corporal York's actions may seem unremarkable to a reader sitting in their living room or classroom, but as soldiers and Americans, we know that it's unethical to fire on unarmed prisoners. But exercising discipline in the heat or terror of battle is not necessarily intuitive. Unfortunately, there have been examples in our Army's history of times when soldiers did not exercise discipline, when they let the horrors of war poison their better judgment. But in the Army, we remember cases like Corporal York's, as well as cases when judgment falters, because they remind us of what we should be, as well as what we cannot be. We defend American values with our rifles, and we uphold those same values through our choices and actions. That's why all soldiers must strive to serve honorably, and it takes deliberate effort and practice. Disciplined soldiers that act respectfully and appropriately off the battlefield are the best ones prepared for the pressures and trials of war. As a leader, it's your responsibility to establish and enforce high ethical standards within your formation and ensure that the actions of your team, whether it's taking a knee or rushing into the fight, are defensible to the American people.
Even before the first Huey lifted off, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore knew that the fight ahead would be brutal. He had been advised that the North Vietnamese were likely congregating in the Ia Drang Valley. It had been used as a base by the Viet Minh previously. Friendly troops had not been into the valley in a while, and it was close to the border of Cambodia, which meant a quick escape for the enemy, as Americans were prohibited from crossing that border. Plus, Lieutenant Colonel Moore's troops were green and under strength. They had only engaged in a handful of guerrilla fighters since arriving in country. Many were in transit, coming on or off leave. Even more were sick. However, the men were eager and had trained hard. Moreover, the mission was the mission. The brigade needed control of the valley, and his battalion was to take landing zone X-ray. There was no alternative. Just minutes after the last troops hit the ground, the gentle sounds of the jungle were overcome with the snap of bullets and the thud of grenades. For 2 days and 2 nights, 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry fought back against persistent Vietnamese troops who occupied the high ground on multiple sides. The battalion area was strewn with dead and wounded Americans and surrounded by even more dead and wounded Vietnamese. Each night, as the Americans dug in, they knew that dawn would bring more fighting and possibly their own deaths. Across landing zone X-ray, leaders made both good calls and mistakes, while soldiers witnessed and experienced both setbacks and triumphs. In the middle of it all were Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore and Sergeant Major Basil Plumley, assessing the battle and finding opportunities for action, directing evacuations, checking the perimeter, and boosting morale. There were many examples of courage and sharp thinking in that battle. It was Moore and Plumley, though, through their relentless force of will, who kept the Americans' momentum up against the odds. By the end of the battle, the Americans had taken significant casualties, though the enemy had taken far more. It was a bitter fight, but Moore and Plumley's leadership, initiative,
and sheer grit saved the battalion from annihilation and allowed them to accomplish the mission.
The Army defines leadership as influencing people by giving them purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish a mission and improve the organization. This seems pretty straightforward. However, the uniqueness of our vocation makes leading soldiers particularly challenging. When circumstances are dire and hope seems lost, leadership in the Army is about being in the thick of it with our troops and lighting the path to success and inspiring soldiers to follow you along that path. Do this by cultivating your personal force of will, be there for your troops, and genuinely care for them and their families. Make them stronger through realistic training, empower them through mission command, and inspire them to succeed by fostering a culture of mutual respect.
Extremely high regard that I have for the American soldier. He is the best fighting man that I have ever seen.
Our Army is an amazing organization, filled with talented young Americans who want to live a life of purpose by serving their country. As a member of the Army profession, much is expected of you. The Army expects you to be a warrior, skilled, tough, relentless, and lethal. A professional, and exercise personal courage, restraint, and ethical judgment. And a leader, to show your soldiers a path forward when none seems possible, and inspire them to act. These are high expectations, but our Army has a sacred mandate: to protect the people worth protecting, and defend a country worth defending. We do this with courage, conviction, and without hesitation, because we are a land of the free. This we'll defend.